Britain in the 1970s was a nation in trouble. Fuel crises drained confidence. Strikes paralyzed factories. Economic pressure forced car manufacturers to cut corners at every turn. Small engines, thin bodies, and bare-bones engineering became the standard answer to a difficult decade. The result was a generation of cars that crawled rather than cruised. Some were lovable despite their limitations. Others were genuinely painful to live with. Today on Britain Rewind, we are counting down 10 of the slowest British cars from that era. If you enjoy classic British motoring history, subscribe for more. Stay until number 1. You simply will not believe it. Number 10. Vauxhall Viva HC. Vauxhall Viva HC was a car that was everywhere in 1970s Britain. The Vauxhall Viva HC arrived in 1970, and in its most basic specification it carried a 1,159cc overhead valve engine producing just 44 brake horsepower. That was not an impressive number even by the standards of that era. Top speed sat at around 80 miles per hour, and climbing from rest to 60 miles per hour took nearly 19 long seconds. For a family saloon sold to ordinary working people across Britain, that kind of performance demanded enormous patience. The driving experience was noisy, breathless, and somehow still completely underwhelming. Vauxhall had tried to offer affordable value, but value and speed rarely lived in the same postcode back then. Could you imagine sitting behind that wheel every single day? And this was only number 10. The cars just ahead were all considerably harder to live with daily. Number 9. Triumph Toledo. Moving one step higher brings us to a car that wore the Triumph badge with considerably more style and substance. The Triumph Toledo launched in 1970, positioned as a sensible small saloon for the budget-conscious British buyer. Under its bonnet sat a 1,296cc overhead valve engine producing just 58 brake horsepower. That modest figure translated to a top speed of roughly 88 miles per hour and a 0s to 60 time of around 17 seconds. Not catastrophically slow, but certainly not the kind of performance that inspired confidence on a busy dual carriageway. The real frustration came from the gearbox, which felt notoriously vague and required careful coaxing to find any rhythm. Triumph had built cars that genuinely excited drivers, yet the Toledo somehow missed that spirit entirely. Would you have bought one back then knowing what lay under the bonnet? Several cars further up this list were far more difficult to tolerate. Number 8. Hillman Avenger. Hillman Avenger is a car that deserves to be remembered, even if its performance most certainly does not. The Hillman Avenger launched in 1970 under Chrysler UK, replacing older Roots Group models with something new and modern-looking. The base variant came equipped with a 1,248cc overhead valve engine pushing out just 53 brake horsepower. Getting from rest to 60 miles per hour took approximately 18 seconds, and top speed hovered around 84 miles per hour on a good day. The Avenger was designed as reliable everyday transport rather than exciting transport, and it achieved that goal with depressing consistency. Drivers reported the car felt completely disconnected at speed, as if the road itself was entirely irrelevant to proceedings. But that was only part of the story. How little the power improved even in larger engine options was equally telling. More surprising performances were certainly still to come further up this countdown. Number 7. Morris Marina. Morris Marina is perhaps the most notorious name on this entire list. The Morris Marina arrived in 1971, built by British Leyland as a direct rival to the Ford Cortina. In basic 1.3-litre trim, it used a 1,275cc A-series engine developing around 60 brake horsepower. That figure put the Marina's top speed at roughly 88 miles per hour, while reaching 60 miles per hour from rest required between 16 and 18 seconds depending on conditions. The problem was not the engine alone. The Marina suffered from heavy, imprecise steering, a suspension setup so outdated it embarrassed the engineers who designed it, and a driving character that inspired absolutely no confidence whatsoever. Journalists at the time described it as wallowing through corners as if handling was something it had never been introduced to. Would you have trusted it on a wet motorway? Number 6 was slower and somehow even more disappointing. Number 6. Austin Maxi. Austin Maxi takes us deeper into the British Leyland universe and into genuinely frustrating territory. The Austin Maxi was introduced in 1969 and sold throughout the 1970s, marketed as a practical family hatchback with innovative space. Under the bonnet sat a 1,485 overhead cam engine producing around 69 brake horsepower. A 0 to 60 time of roughly 16 seconds and a top speed of 87 miles per hour placed it firmly in sluggish territory. But the performance figures were almost beside the point. The Austin Maxi was remembered more for its extraordinarily difficult cable-operated gear change, which felt like stirring porridge with a broom handle. Mechanics dreaded working on it. Owners learned to plan gear selections well in advance just to avoid embarrassment at junctions. If you have ever driven one, drop a comment and tell us what it was really like. The next entry on this countdown makes the Maxi feel almost effortless. Number 5. Chrysler Sunbeam. Chrysler Sunbeam is a car that very few people today remember fondly. The Chrysler Sunbeam was launched in 1977, assembled at the Linwood plant near Glasgow and the Wrighton-on-Dunsmore factory in Coventry. In base trim it carried a 928cc overhead valve engine producing just 42 brake horsepower, making it one of the least powerful hatchbacks available anywhere in Britain at the time. From rest, 60 miles per hour arrived in approximately 18 seconds, and top speed sat at around 82 miles per hour. The driving experience was thin, underpowered, and characterless in ways that even period reviewers struggled to forgive. Chrysler was fighting for survival in Britain, and this was the product of that desperation. What made it truly frustrating was how little the car improved the longer you drove it. The feeling never grew on you. And yet something even harder to forgive was still waiting ahead on this countdown. Number 4. Austin Allegro. Austin Allegro introduces a car that became one of the most ridiculed vehicles in British automotive history. The Austin Allegro was launched by British Leyland in 1973 as a replacement for the beloved Austin 1100. In entry-level 1100 specification it came with a 1098cc A-series engine producing only 44 brake horsepower. From rest, reaching 60 miles per hour took over 21 seconds. Top speed was a theoretical 83 miles per hour, though many owners doubted their cars ever reached it. But the performance was only one of the Allegro's many problems. The original version came with a square-shaped steering wheel, which British Leyland called a quartic wheel. It looked peculiar, felt worse, and made precise steering corrections genuinely difficult. Owners reported it felt more like operating a badly designed appliance than driving a car. Keep watching, because the two vehicles ahead were slower still and even more difficult to forgive. Number 3. Leyland Princess. Leyland Princess is where this countdown enters genuinely uncomfortable territory. The Leyland Princess was introduced in 1975 as the replacement for the Austin 1800, wearing a controversial wedge-shaped body styled by Harris Mann. The 1.8-litre version used a 1798cc B-series engine producing around 82 brake horsepower, which sounds reasonable until you consider the car weighed over 1,100 kilograms. 0 to 60 miles per hour took around 15 seconds despite that extra cubic capacity, and top speed reached barely 96 miles per hour. But performance was not the Princess's greatest problem. The Hydrogas suspension system that replaced conventional springs could and did fail without warning, leaving the car sitting at an alarming angle on the road. Owners called breakdown services for reasons entirely unrelated to the engine. Would you tolerate a car that could sit down on you without notice? Number 2 was slower, heavier in spirit, and harder to explain. Number 2. Reliant Robin. At number 2, we reach one of the most unusual vehicles ever produced in Britain. The Reliant Robin was launched by Reliant of Tamworth in 1973, built on the company's tradition of three-wheeled motoring. Its engine was a 748cc overhead valve unit producing just 32 brake horsepower. That tiny output gave the Robin a top speed of around 70 miles per hour, with a 0 to 60 time of approximately 26 seconds. In practice, reaching motorway speeds felt like a genuine act of optimism. The Robin's three-wheel configuration meant that high-speed stability was theoretical at best. Strong crosswinds could push it sideways across a lane, and tight corners required calculated commitment. Yet Reliant sold thousands of them throughout the decade, partly because their lightweight fiberglass body allowed owners to drive on a motorcycle license. Would you take one onto a motorway today? What waits at number 1 makes the Robin seem positively capable? Number 1, Vanden Plas. And now we arrive at number 1. The Vanden Plas 1500, introduced in 1974 by British Leyland, was a luxury version of the Austin Allegro, already one of the most criticized cars of the decade. Beneath hand-stitched Connolly leather and walnut veneer sat the same 1,485cc overhead cam engine from the Allegro range, producing 68 brake horsepower. From rest, 60 miles per hour arrived in over 16 seconds. Top speed sat at around 93 miles per hour. But the real problem was not pace. The Quartic steering wheel made emergency corrections dangerously imprecise. Early cars suffered a catastrophic ball joint fault that could cause complete, sudden loss of steering with no warning at all. Imagine paying luxury prices for a dressed-up Allegro that could steer itself into danger without notice. This was not simply slow. This was British Leyland at its most confused, most pretentious, and most genuinely difficult to drive. 10 cars. 10 reminders of a Britain that no longer exists. The 1970s forced manufacturers to choose between survival and ambition, and many chose survival at the expense of everything else. These machines were not all terrible. Some were charming, some were brave, and a few were products of genuinely difficult times. But none would survive a single week in today's market. Which one would you drive today? Let us know in the comments below. If this video entertained you, a like and subscribe would mean a great deal. Until next time, this is Britain Rewind. Keep the past moving.